everyone, you're very welcome to this week's episode of our Padre podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe and click the notifications bell so don't miss any future videos and updates. If you're enjoying the content and want to buy me a coffee to help with the costs, you can do so in the link below. And please check out my vlogging channel, Pitch Spotting with Podrick. There'll be some very interesting vlogs planned in the year ahead. This week, I'd like to welcome back my good friend, Kieran Shanahan, back by the fireside. It's been a good 12 months, believe it or not, since we last had the pleasure of your company, Kieran. A lot has happened since then. Positive change for Newcastle, which we're going to come to shortly. But thanks a million for coming back on again. It's great to see you.
Thanks very much for having me. It's always nice to be on.
So before we get stuck into it, Kieran, a happy New Year to you. Cheers and good health to you. And hope you had a great Christmas.
You too.
First and many more. What were your thoughts in the Festival of Football in Qatar over the last few weeks?
I found it hard to engage with in the beginning because the time of year was weird.
Yeah.
But then as it kind of went on, once you got to the knockout games, you kind of get sucked back in. I found it, I didn't watch much of the group games as much as I would. Like, there was a time where I'd watch every game. But I work shift and things, and so sometimes you're working and you miss all the games. On another day you're off, you see every game. So there was a bit of that where I wouldn't have caught every game. Certain teams I tried to follow, like I watched all of Argentina's games where I could and things like that. But by the finish of it, it got better and better and better. Like, the semi-finals were good, the final was excellent. It was the best final I can remember anyway, and probably one of the best games I've ever. Maybe not the best quality, but definitely for excitement there, particularly the tail end of extra time, was something else altogether. It was good. It finished up very well. It finished very strong.
I think it was probably the World Cup in my life that I had the least enthusiasm for going into it. As you said, the time of year was a big factor, and it's kind of an interruption to the Premier League season as well. But overall, I have to say it was a very good tournament. What did you make of the overall quality, we'll say, of the VAR decisions and that throughout the tournament?
Well, for context now, I despise VAR. I think VAR should not exist apart from goal line technology. But we'll park that. The refereeing was inconsistent. Some of the referees were terrible. Some of them were good. The guy in the final was good, but some of them in the earlier rounds were bad. The England-France game in particular was atrocious. But I think if they had, I know it sounds very, what's the word? It's not very diplomatic, but if they only let the referees who referee Champions League games referee the World Cup, it'd be fine. But there's a lot of referees from CONCACAF and CONMEBOL and these places, and they're not great. They don't, they're not. I'd say the referees aren't good enough to begin with, and then you have all the shit that's probably gone down in the background down top of it. But they're just not. The referees aren't very good. They're not what we'd be accustomed to watching in England, where the referees are fairly good most of the time. That's just the way it is. The football gospel hasn't spread that wide yet, I don't think.
It's like the equivalent of a referee from a non-hurling county refereeing.
A bit like that, given
stupid
frees and stuff. Yeah, it's a bit like that. Yeah, you'd always know it. Yeah. You would always know when a fella from Westmeath is refereeing the All-Ireland final. Like when James Owens gets his hand in an All-Ireland final, it always goes bad. But it's just the referees aren't as good from the other countries. Is probably what the top and bottom of it is like.
I just want to get your opinion as well on probably one of the most controversial decisions of the World Cup is the Japan and Spain game with the ball that was adjudged to have been in play, and it resulted in Germany being knocked out of the World Cup.
Yeah.
What was your thoughts on that?
Well, as I said to you, it would be nice if VAR was used for the things that actually are black and white and clear cut and you can't be gotten wrong. According to it, there was a micron of the ball in play.
Yeah.
That image could have come from anywhere. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You just don't know. Especially with the World Cup being on where it was on, and you just don't know. But look, if you don't believe in that, you believe in nothing. So I'm going to have to just work on the assumption that it was what it was. Do you know what I mean? Because otherwise, what are we doing here? Like, you have to assume some bit of integrity. Like, so yeah, I'd be fairly sour now if it happened to me on a Sunday morning. I can tell you that. But look, I don't know. It is what it is, I suppose.
I suppose the one thing we learned from that is it's not enough to have 99.99% of the ball.
If a linesman was looking, if a linesman was looking straight at that, it's out of play. Like, there's no doubt. If myself or you or anyone else was looking along a line and we said, nah. Even if you thought there was the 1% chance that it might be still in play, you would put up the flag anyway to cover your arse. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's only that like, would you see it? Like, I was watching, I watched Liverpool match back, and I watched the Man United match back this morning. And like, some of the offsides now are ridiculous. There's fellas 5 yards offside, and the linesman is letting them play on and saying, "Oh well, VAR will bail me out if I'm wrong." Like, it's gone to a ridiculous degree. Like, you know, they're letting like anyway in an hour. If VAR didn't exist, that flag would have went up.
The main frustration I have with VAR is that people are getting called offside for like the crest of their jersey being slightly ahead, but blatant stuff has been missed. Like, you know, and no, by the rules of the game, the Japan goal, and you know, you could say it's a conspiracy theory, but it resulted in a superpower being knocked out of the World Cup in Germany. So I wouldn't fully subscribe to that. And look, from I've saw videos preparing for this, and it looked like it was the right decision. But and if it was, if the full ball wasn't out of play, the justice was done. You know. And that's maybe an example of how VAR worked well.
I suppose it's just what frustrates you is that it's right today and it's wrong tomorrow, and it's applied inconsistently. And but look, again, I'm blue in the face from saying it. Once you introduce humans into any process, you will get human error. And if they just use VAR for nothing only, ball is in and left it at that, most of us would be happy enough. We take our chances with the linesman being right or wrong.
Yeah.
You know. Anyway.
Well, look, to be honest, I'm in favour of VAR once it's applied with common sense, because the camera doesn't lie.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, you know. But as you said, you're never going to fully remove human error from sport. It's as simple as that.
No.
Any context. Morocco did well.
They did.
You'd have good odds on them getting to the semi-final beforehand.
You would, although I'm not going to say I fancy them to get out of the group, because I didn't. But any team Martinez is involved with, there's always a chance of it going haywire. How the bigger story, in my opinion, is not like Morocco's a great story, but like how Belgium managed to hand over the keys to probably they'll never have a team as good as they've had over the last 6 or 7 or 8 years, and to give it to a fella who like had a proven track record of being a disaster in England, and then he gets the job as manager of Belgium, is just mental. Belgium have a history of bombing in tournaments, fair enough, but they never had a team like they had the last 5 or 6 years, like, and they've just nothing to show for it at all. Like,
I wouldn't fully agree with that. No, like, he won the FA Cup with Wigan.
Okay.
2013. He got Everton to the cusp of a top 4 finish in 2014. So I wouldn't say he was a complete disaster, but
he was a bit of a disaster.
Yeah, well, he'll always be here.
He certainly didn't deserve to get the Belgium job.
Yeah.
He wouldn't have got, like, if Liverpool gave him the Liverpool job, you wouldn't have been too happy about it.
Well, he was a leading contender for it back in 2012 when Brendan Rodgers got it. It was with 2 horse races.
Dodged the bullet there.
Yeah, well, he got into Everton after. No, I would agree with you. There was better candidates than Martinez to get the Belgium job. I would agree with that 100%. But I wouldn't fully denigrate his legacy in England either. You know.
No.
You're not a fan.
No, I never was. I remember even when his teams would be doing well. It's a bit like the way I never liked Alan Pardew even when they finished 5th. Even when Martinez's teams would be going well, they were so easy to beat. They played this stupid brand of soccer that they weren't able to play, passing the ball around the back, and then eventually give away the ball. And they were tailor-made, a bit like the way Leeds kind of play. a bit like that, and like you'll never. I don't know. It's just a thing I have with him. It's just a thing I have. I can't watch. I can't watch it.
I suppose Euro 2016 they got to the quarterfinals. Wales knocked them out, and then I suppose their best chance in hindsight was probably 2018 World Cup. They got to the semi-final. Yeah. If they'd gotten over France that night, it would have been a Croatia-Belgium final.
Well, it's just, I suppose, the players they had. It's like you wouldn't know. Like another better managers have done worse as well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like, I don't know. Wouldn't have been my choice. Anyway.
Fair play to Morocco for getting to the semi-final.
Fair play to Morocco.
Just get back to the point.
Congratulations to Morocco. We got there in the
end. And becoming the first African country to get to the semi-final.
Yeah. Oh, it's some achievement, in fairness.
And to be fair, I was delighted. Now, obviously, I'll never forget what Suarez did for Liverpool for the time he was, but I felt a bit of karma came back to him in Ghana. That result, Ghana and Uruguay, when Uruguay went out with the World Cup.
Yeah.
At that stage, it was considering it was his handball that deprived Ghana of being the first African country back until 2010. In hindsight, we probably would have done the same ourselves, but Suarez is a pantomime villain, so he fits the criteria, and he'll always be an enemy of Ghana people.
I think, in fairness to Morocco as well, like if you watch the games, they fully deserved. Like they played well. Like okay, they sat back a lot against Spain, but like they were good. Like they did play well. Like even the semi-final against France, they gave France a game of it. Like they did give them a game of it. They had chances. Like
one point as well, I just thought the irony that I always loved the final group stage game. Games were played simultaneously. I think the reason they had to do that was there was one year that Germany needed to win by 9 goals and just so happened to win by 9 goals. So they had to. It was something along those lines, like. And just the irony, the celebration when you get out of the group, when you scrape out of the group, but 3 days later, that team usually gets knocked out with the second round. So it's just funny how in the space of 3 days they're in the same space as the team they just knocked out 3 days earlier. Like it's kind of the irony of it.
Yeah. What about Argentina, though?
Yeah, we're just going to get to that, the final. As you said, I can't remember a World Cup final in my lifetime anyway, anywhere like it.
No.
I think the only World Cup final that would probably compare to it was England-Germany in '66. But in this case, a guy got a hat-trick that actually all three crossed the line, which will...
Fair play to him.
Ali McCoy, we get to that. The number 10 for Argentina looks a player.
He's all right, yeah. He
has potential.
It was nice. It was nice for him. It was nice for him because, like, I won't say always, but certainly since about 2010, I always kind of thought that he was definitely the best player I ever saw. And he's nowadays, you see, because they play so many games and there's so many competitions, the statistics can get out of whack. Like goal tallies and things nowadays. Like I know Pele counted goals that he scored in like Escape to Victory, which, and stuff like that. But nowadays there's so many games, so many more games than there was years ago, that the goal tallies and stuff are a bit out of kilter. So if you're looking at that and not else, it can kind of more. But it's a World Cup is still a World Cup. Do you know what I mean? A Copa America is still a Copa America. A European Cup is actually probably harder to win now. No, okay, back in the day, you could draw Real Madrid in the first round and get knocked out over 2 legs. Maybe that doesn't happen anymore. But you have a last 16 now that you didn't have. You could draw, like Liverpool could win the league by 20 points and you could meet Atletico Madrid in the last 16 or someone like that. It's gone hard. There's a lot more big club, like.
That actually happened 2 years ago as well.
Yeah, exactly. Like football.
That exact example happened. Like.
Football is much more evenly spread out. Was much more evenly spread out years ago. There was more teams capable of winning, whereas now it's very hard to win now because you have to get over the same cabal of 5 or 6 clubs. So, like the Champions League, Messi has the World Cup now. It kind of cements him, in my opinion. I think he's the best player that ever played.
It was always a string to Maradona's bow on that argument that he'd won a World Cup for Argentina in '86, and it's important. And I thought Messi had lost his chance in 2014 when they lost the final to Germany. That was peak Messi. He was 27 then, and they got to the final, lost it in extra time to Germany. In the World Cup before that, Maradona was manager, and they lost 4-0 to Germany. And from what I gather, it wasn't a very easy relationship between Maradona and Messi. From what I can gather, Maradona, I think even Pele, his relationship with Pele wasn't meant to be too great either. I think Maradona, ego, he always wanted to be number one, and Messi was definitely a threat to that mantle. And maybe that clash between the two resulted in them going out poorly enough in the 2010 World Cup. And the final itself, there was only one team in it for the first 75 minutes. France. There was rumours before the game of a flu breakout in the squad, and they had the signs of it for that first three quarters of the game. But the class of Mbappe turned the game on its head, really, didn't it? Like 2 quick goals. It reminded me a little bit of Limerick in '94 against Offaly, just the 2 whirlwind goals, and it just the tide had completely turned. And I thought France were going to win it at the end of normal time. Then extra time comes, Messi scores again, and you think the script is written now. He's got the golden goal in extra time, and then Mbappe scores again. Another penalty. You couldn't write it really. Like, it was incredible, wasn't it?
Yeah. The thing that I actually thought Argentina, like a bit like your story, I thought Argentina's chance was gone once France got level. Even when they got the one, it's one of those things where you'd often see it in sport where you're being outplayed, and the other team is way better than you. And then all of a sudden something goes your way, a ball bounces or you win a penalty or something, and you're back in it, and now you're gone, might be on, and once they got level, like the other thing France had was their subs. They were so athletic. The legs France brought on, like Argentina were out in their feet at the end of normal time. They needed the whistle. In actual fact, Argentina needed to get to full time pronto because they were so tired, and they kind of regrouped in an extra time, got a bit of a breath. But France, I think Deschamps got his subs right, and they were so athletic, and they were running all over Argentina. And the goalie kind of saved them, and a few bits of things went their way. But it was as good a final, even the extra time, like, was riveting. The last 30 seconds, down one end, Martinez makes an unbelievable save. And then did Argentina go down and have a chance straight after it, and near miss a header, I think it was. But like, I can never remember anything like it. Even club games, like, it was as good a game of soccer as I ever watched,
It was Muani had the chance for France.
Yes.
And France had a chance to win at the end of normal time as well. So now, before the game or before the World Cup, I backed Argentina to win the World Cup outright.
Mm-hmm.
And before the penalty shootout, I hedged on France.
Right.
And my logic, so I have my winnings to turn up. But my logic was Argentina were going to have to win it for a third time.
Mm-hmm.
They'd won it twice already.
Yeah.
And the fact that France had hung in and survived twice, I figured the motivation was with them, and they win it in penalties.
And that's often the way. The team that's under the caution in the 90 minutes or the 120 minutes often does win the penalties. Often.
I had an awful fear Messi was going to miss his penalty. I'll be quite honest. It would have been, and looking back, it wasn't a brilliant penalty by him, to be fair. If the keeper gets right, he would have saved it easily. Mm-hmm. But it would have been typical for the man, who had done so much, had almost won them the World Cup in the game, to be the villain. Kieran is a shrewd gambler, for those who may not know, and he predicted Argentina to win on penalties before the game started. What price did you get, Kieran, on it?
19-2, I think it was. Something like that. It wasn't quite 10-1 anyway. It was just under 10-1, I think.
So just like to remind you that my phone is always open and is always open to WhatsApp messages for any tips you may have.
Actually, I was going to back Argentina to win it, and I hadn't the stones for it. Even after, would you believe? Even after they lost to Saudi Arabia, I actually watched that match. No, I watched it at work. I watched it someplace I shouldn't have been watching. But even after they lost that game, I still thought they could win it. and I still didn't back him, which was pretty stupid. So I'm not that smart. Only sometimes.
But it was like Spain lost their first game to Switzerland in 2010 as well, so Ireland beating Italy, USA 94, Italy got to the final. The first game can be a dodgy one.
Didn't Argentina lose to Cameroon?
Cameroon
got to the final.
1990, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's happened to a good few teams though. They lost the first game and gone on.
Italy are notoriously slow starters as well, as that Ireland is one example. But fair play. I hope you spent it well.
Do you know that I even spinned it yet?
You'd be lumping on there now and some horse later on or something like that.
Yeah, she's the fastest.
Yeah. There was a Leopardstown bet there, 145. I'm a sucker for the money back as a free bet if your horse finishes second, third, or fourth.
That's not the name.
No, but sorry, a penny four. And I backed the favourite Flooring Porter 2-1.
Right.
So he came fourth, got my money back, Champions League spot. And the winner was Home by the Lee. Wouldn't you know it? So a good Cork reference there.
A lot of good disc.
But speaking of villains, we'll come to Martinez. He was the hero in the shootout, though, to be fair. He saved the penalty from Kingsley Coman and then throwing the ball away before Tissue and Mini missed.
Too keen on young fellas taking penalties, Pod. I know France's team was young anyway, but maybe they didn't. No, off the top of my head, I don't have anything written down here in front of me. Maybe they didn't have more experienced players on the field. Griezmann going off probably deprived him of a penalty taker, but I'd say when they took Griezmann off, they weren't thinking they were going to penalties. But yeah, it reminded me of Saka for England against Italy that time. Young fella, not used to that sort of pressure. Actually, Argentina did a thing that I would never have done. They brought on Dybala with about 3 minutes to go on extra time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Pretty much with the purpose of taking a penalty. That's one of the old golden rules you wouldn't do. You wouldn't put a fella on cold. Now, he got a few touches of the ball, actually, which probably helped him. But as a general rule, you wouldn't just bring a fella on with 30 seconds to go to take a penalty. You might put a goalie on with 30 seconds to go to save a penalty. But generally speaking, you'd like a fella to have gotten a few touches of the ball before the penalty shootout starts, but it worked out for him anyway.
I think West Ham did that one day. Was it Mark Noble or was it?
Maybe.
And he missed a penalty. They brought him on specifically when they got a penalty late in a normal Premier League game to take a penalty, and he missed.
I'd never be keen on bringing a fella on just to take a penalty. Not in the last minute or so anyway.
The one thing I would never be a fan of as well with penalties is a short run-up.
Right.
I don't like it. And I don't like hitting the penalty high either. My logic would be pick a corner, hit it low. If the goalkeeper gets it right, fair play to him. But hit the target.
Yeah. The only thing I'd say is if, statistically speaking, penalties that are hit over that height, over 4 foot ish, they tend to go in. Generally. Anything between 2 foot and 4 foot is a nice savable height. They always say, if you guess it the right way, it's going to get saved. Whereas it either has to be literally along the grass into the corner or high, and you'll be fine.
No, I'm talking about ones that are scraping the crossbar, that are,
all right, yeah,
they're purposely hit high,
Yeah.
So look, the World Cup got the fairy tale finish in the end. There's no debate anymore about who's better between Ronaldo and Messi. Ronaldo just was his usual petulant self in the World Cup, and you can moan to Piers Morgan about that afterwards, and that's fine. One thing I suppose that we didn't like to see was the conduct of Martinez after the World Cup final and being presented with the Golden Glove. Now, as we were saying off camera, Argentinians would never win awards for sportsmanship or being moralizers. It wouldn't be their strongest point, but I thought he showed a distinct lack of class, in my opinion, presenting the Golden Glove.
Yeah. I suppose Argentina won the tournament by any means necessary. If you remember the Holland game in particular, whatever they had to do to win that, they were going to do it. And that's just the way. Now, in saying that, it's also what kind of makes them endearing, because they probably punch above their weight a bit. Like, even though, like, Argentina, a great and all as a football country as they are, they're not Brazil, or they're not Germany, or they're not Italy. Do you know what I mean? They're not like, but in saying that, it certainly, if he was a soldier, he'd be court-martialed for conduct unbecoming of an officer or something like that. It certainly wasn't appropriate stuff. Again, like I said, they won it the way they won it. Now, the final kind of eradicates everything that went before, but then what he did after leaves an awful stain. No, some people won't care, but definitely, it wasn't nice. It definitely wasn't nice.
What also wasn't nice was on the team bus in the parade when he had a kind of a baby doll with Mbappe's face on it.
Right.
Thinking to myself, Mbappe scored 4 goals past you, pal, including 3 penalties, and you couldn't save one. So I'd be kind of saying we're not really in a position to criticise Mbappe here. That'd be my opinion on it.
Yeah, you'd wonder who'd be advising these fellas, but then it's saying that you don't know. You don't know. Like, apparently, like, he has a track record of being fairly controversial. Like, I'm not controversial, is probably the wrong word, but like, he'll do what he has to do when he's playing for Villa as well. He gets up to different types of antics, whatever it takes. Do you know?
It's going through that shit on the pitch when you're trying to get an edge and you want to win. Like, I can live with the putting players off for penalty shootouts, because Grobbelaar did something similar in 1984 for Liverpool with spaghetti legs in the goal line. And to get an edge, that's fair enough on the field to play. But off the field, I think it shows a distinct lack of class to be going on with that. And I would give Mbappe great credit. Like, Mbappe scored 2 penalties in normal time and extra time, and a third in the shootout. And when a striker is a third penalty, the odds are stacked against him, I think. With Harry Kane against France, when you have a second penalty, there's always a doubt, do I put in the same place? Do I change it up? But Mbappe passed that test 3 times, and fair play to him so at the end of the day, Martinez, he plays for Aston Villa, a lower mid-table Premier League club. Maybe he'll get a move to a better club, I don't know. But I certainly won't be wishing him much luck or success in the future after that. And I think when Messi retired, I don't think I'd be openly shouting for Argentina either, if I'm honest.
Yeah, well, I think, look, he got his day. So
he got his day, but he didn't cover himself or his family in glory on both accounts, to be fair, But I'm saying that I am happy he won the World Cup for Messi. I think most people are, to be honest. One thing I noticed, the World Cup final was on last Sunday, and Liverpool were playing Man City 3 days later. And I don't know if you've noticed this or not, Newcastle were also playing in the League Cup.
Yeah.
Pace and quality of club football really is superior, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Just to give an example of international football, and it's a pub quiz question, we could say. Now, this will be broken by Mbappe, I would say, at the next World Cup. Or if not, the World Cup after, if he stays injury-free. But the player with the most World Cup goals in history, can you name him?
Just Fontaine?
He scored the most in one World Cup, with the player with the record of total in spread out over a number of World Cups.
Miroslav Klose, maybe?
Correct. But not many people would have got that at first guess.
Okay.
Would that be fair? Miroslav Klose won't go down as a renowned...
No, he played in great teams.
Yeah.
And played for a long time.
So that's an example. Miroslav Klose has got the most goals in World Cup history. It's kind of a telling sign, that there's a difference. The players at club level and international, it's a step up. I would go so far. I would go so far as to say, in GA terms, it's the reverse of club and county. That the standard at county level is obviously higher than club, but in football, club is higher than county / international. And I thought the pace, it was like watching. Now, the final was a fantastic game, France and Argentina. I'm not disputing that. But if you analyse the run-of-the-mill games in that tournament, the Liverpool-Man City game eclipsed it for pace, quality, chances. and I'm glad we're back to the club
Yeah.
stage, if I'm honest. And I hope it's the last World Cup played in November, December as well. Also,
I'd say we'll have one in Saudi Arabia yet.
More than likely, but
I'd say so. Yeah, if you don't get it in 2030, you'll definitely get it in 2034. I'd say.
Money talks, I suppose, at the end of the day. But
we won't have to worry about that for the next couple. So
no, it's fine. We'll focus on that. But getting back to the club side of things. So this time last year, when you were last on, Newcastle were second bottom of the Premier League.
Yeah.
Fast forward 12 months, and it wasn't looking great because at the time we said they would have to go on a serious run and do what I'd never done before to stay up. As it happens, he bought exceptionally well in the window. Eddie Howe came in. Eddie Howe was not long in the job this time last year, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, he'd had maybe 6 or 7 games.
Yeah. So Newcastle ended up finishing 11th last season.
Yeah.
It was a fair achievement. Since then, I saw Newcastle play live against Everton at St. James's Park. Thanks to you, helped me get a ticket and experience the atmosphere. And it's something I definitely would like to do again at some stage. Great atmosphere, great city. And fast forward 12 months, we're now second in the league. So you must, as a Newcastle fan, not only that, but you're in the quarterfinals of the League Cup. So there's a great chance to add a bit of silverware as well. Much overdue silverware, I might add. So I suppose, as a Newcastle fan, could you maybe talk through how the last year has gone? And you must be delighted.
Yeah. I suppose, so today, delighted. I mean, yesterday again, 2 days ago now, beat Leicester 3-0 away, totally comfortable. Like, Newcastle looked every bit a top 4 team. Like, they were just so good. They're very, very, very good at the moment. But the last 12 months, the last time I was on with you was Christmas Eve last year. And I remember saying there was a couple of games coming up after that. There was one in particular at home to Watford on St. Ida's Day last year. And I was saying if they win that one, it'll be grand. And they wound up drawing it.
Just to explain for the people who are not from Limerick, they're listening. St. Ida's Day is the 15th of January.
Yeah. So they played Watford. They had a couple of, and I remember you actually said to me was where they are after the Watford game, and they played Leeds the following weekend would tell a lot. And they wound up drawing the Watford game. João Pedro scored the header, the last kick of the game to draw 1-1. Newcastle were all over Watford that day. And then they played Leeds away and they won 1-0. Shelby scored a free kick. And then they took off from there. But they had just that win against Leeds, just put them back in touch. And I had kind of always said, if we could stay within 3 to 4 points of whoever was in 17th place going into the tail end of the transfer window, and if we signed a couple of players, we might be all right. Now, what they did was they bought players that were way better than I thought they'd buy. So like Kieran Trippier came in last year, early January. His first game actually was a home 1-0 loss to Cambridge United in the League Cup. Was it 1-0? I think it was 1-0.
The FA Cup, I think, was it?
It was the FA Cup, yeah. Third round or whatever. So it's an annual tradition for Newcastle to get beaten in the third round of the FA Cup. So.
And it's not a bad one either when you're chasing a relegation dogfight.
No, it was ideal. And I even said at the time, even though you would have all the pundits having a great laugh at Newcastle losing to Cambridge, I'd happily lose it. Anyhow, they then signed a guy named Bruno Guimaraes, who was in the Brazil squad for the World Cup and is playing very well at the moment. They signed a guy named Dan Byrne, local fella. He's from Newcastle, played for Brighton. They signed Matt Targett on loan from Villa because Villa signed Luca Digne from Everton, if you remember it. So he wasn't getting his game, so Newcastle took him up. And I think that was it. And they just basically and I had said this to you, there were early signs of it about the coaching, the improvement in some of the players, the improvement in, I think one of the ones was Joe Linton, the change in him was unreal. Over the last 12 months, he's been excellent. Almiron, at the moment, he mightn't be the Premier League player of the season, but he's definitely one of them. I think he's 9 goals in 16 games or something like that.
He stuck to Jack Grealish as well, which is nice.
It's funny, yeah. But the biggest thing they have done is I said last year, the one doubt I had was I didn't think he could organise defence. He hadn't the track record of it. And as we sit here now, this minute, Newcastle have the best defence in the Premiership. I never expected that. And that's why Newcastle are where they are. Yes, fair enough. They played really well yesterday. Almiron is on fire and they're scoring goals, and that's brilliant. But it all comes down to Newcastle are keeping clean sheets. And like when you that was a tough fixture now, Boxing Day, Leicester away. That's a fine, hard game. And I actually thought we would lose it because I just felt we've only lost one game all season. There's no way we'll keep this up. Like genuinely, no. You know me, I'd be fairly level-headed. And I just, after watching them after watching them on St. Stephen's Day, I can't see where they're going to lose their next game. They've Arsenal away in 2 weeks' time. I don't expect them to win that game, but I don't see them losing it either. The way they're going. Now there's a long season there. If this was this time last year, you would have 20 games or 22 games played, and you'd have a better sense. Like there's only 6, and teams have games in hand on Newcastle as well. But the way they're going, other teams are going to have to win a lot of games because Newcastle aren't going to lose them. Do you know that kind of a way?
Yeah.
That's the way they're going. But you were asking me about the last 12 months. It's basically been, they've gotten super fit, super organised. The stadium is rocking every game they play. They're the 12th man. They have a huge advantage at home in all their games. I think they haven't lost a home game apart from, I think maybe Man City beat them. I think they've lost one home game in 12 months or something like that. And I think they've only lost 2 away games. I think they lost away to Liverpool and they lost away to Liverpool twice maybe. Something like that. They've only lost 3 or 4 games in the last 12 months anyway. But they've only lost one home game. As far as I know, they lost to City last year. I think that's right. I could be wrong about that. But they certainly haven't lost a home game this year. And the way it's going, they don't look like losing one. So yeah, the defence is the big thing, the fitness levels and the coach. And also they've signed good players. But they didn't go mad in the summer. Sven Botman, centre-back, has been a fantastic signing for them. He's like, he'd remind you what Jonathan Woodgate was 20 years ago. And they signed a striker, Alexander Isak, from Sociedad for huge money, 63 million or something. But he played really well in his debut, scored away to Liverpool, game they eventually lost.
The one again, they lost this season as well, to be fair.
Yeah. And he had a second one disallowed, I think, the same night. And he got injured then shortly after that. He's only played a couple of games and he hasn't played since. So they've kind of been without him. And at the moment, Callum Wilson is injured as well. And Alan St. Maximin is in the team. So yesterday, 2 days ago, they went away to Leicester without Isaac, without Wilson, without St. Maximin, and beat them 3-0. They're good. Like at the moment, it's hard to stop them at the moment. They've got such momentum. And I thought now that after the long break, having the League Cup game against Bournemouth was a huge help because it broke the ice from last week. That was a huge help. Because I don't know, would they have been as good yesterday? Jeez, I keep saying yesterday. The day before yesterday, if they hadn't had the game in between. But yeah, that was a long-winded way of saying it has been a fairly whirlwind 12 months, I can tell you.
Yeah, and the goalkeeper as well has been a huge addition, hasn't he? Like Nick Pope.
Massive, yeah.
As you said, and it's the proof of the pudding is in, like they've conceded the fewest goals in the league, 11 goals.
Yeah, in 16 games, like.
Very impressive. Now, as you said, it's not a full reflection. As you said, normally by now there'd be 19 or 20 games played, but still, it's not their fault. And they've won their last 6 games in the Premier League, and you can't do physically much better than that. So, of their last 18 points, they've got 18.
Mm-hmm.
So incredible difference. I was watching on TalkSport earlier. There was a section. Could Newcastle consider themselves part of the title question this season?
Mm-hmm.
What would be your thoughts on that? Are they contenders?
No. Realistically, I thought all along we'd say, when I say all along, since the World Cup started, since we got the break, I thought the way we're going, the record we have, the number of points we already have outside of the top 6 with the way they've gone thus far, right? That's where I was up until 2 days ago. Then I watched them play Leicester, and I've kind of started leaning in that they might finish the top 4 now. based on how good they are at the back. Now, a couple of injuries, Newcastle don't have the squad that the other clubs around them have. So I'm expecting us to drop off a bit at some point here. I could be wrong. I didn't think we'd be where we are now, so I've already been wrong once. But there's no way City won't get to 90 points. There's just no way. They're going to get there. Like, I don't know how many games they've lost, or they're a nice bit behind Arsenal, but like City are going to, for the rest of the season now, with the World Cup out of the way and all their players back and fit, and Haaland going the way he's going, they're just going to keep winning games.
Yeah.
Liverpool, if they can get their injuries cleared up a bit, and Salah's playing well. He played well now the other day. I watched him play. Who they played St. Stephen's Day?
Villa.
I watched that game. I watched the whole lot of it back yesterday morning. And I know they're playing well. Your man Nunez up front, he's making good runs, not scoring, but will probably come eventually. But they're rounding in form, especially at the back. Like, they had Matip back now, made a huge difference. Midfield, they're a bit light. Fabinho isn't maybe quite as mobile as he used to be, but they're still good. Chamberlain is back from, like, Liverpool will get into the top four. How high up in it, I don't know, but I expect them to get back into it. Newcastle won't finish ahead of Arsenal, I don't think. So they're the three clubs that I think we won't finish ahead of. We might finish ahead of the rest of them. That'd be my opinion. I think we might. We have a nice little lead on Chelsea. We have a nice little lead on United. Although United games in hand, but I just don't trust them. But the institutional expertise of Liverpool will eventually, probably by default, get them back in, I think. And City, just being the squad being so strong, will eventually rise them up. And it depends on whether Arsenal then can keep going the way they're going. But I don't see us finishing ahead of the three of them. That's my opinion. So therefore, if you're finishing fourth, you're not in any race, in my opinion. Do you know what I mean?
Well, you're confident of a top four finish.
I kind of am. I'm getting there now, yeah. Getting there now. Maybe if you'd asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have said maybe fifth or sixth. But just having watched them play, like, they were, like, I have a good eye now. Like, I remember telling you last year, I thought they'd stay up. Do you know, I'd like to think my eye test is fairly good. And they looked every bit a Champions League side against Leicester. Like, now, if you get a couple of injuries, that could and should probably change. But they didn't have Wilson, they didn't have Isaac, they didn't have St. Maximin, and they still went away at Leicester and beat them away comfortably. Like, just swatted them aside. Like,
my opinion is, I can see a lot of parallels between this season and Man City in 2009, 2010, where that was the first season really that City challenged for a top four finish. Had a good cup run in the League Cup. They got to the League Cup, whatever was sponsored by then, Carling or whoever.
Yeah. And
United knocked them over 2 legs in the semi-final. The Tevez had just signed for them. And they just came up short in the top four, and where Peter Crouch got the goal that put Tottenham through at their expense against them. And the following year he scored an own goal, and the reverse happened. City got top four ahead of Tottenham. And I can see something similar happening to Newcastle this season. I can see possibly just falling short this year, as controversial as it might sound. But from next season onwards, I think, just like City were, I think you'll be regular fixtures in the top four. Because how can you not be? Like, if you get the revenue of European football, with the revenue you already have, you'll be a force. That's guaranteed. And you know what? It may not be the worst thing in the world to not get top four this season. You see the money that Man City have. They haven't come. They got to one final in 12 years. We'll say, if no one hears they're competitive. There's no guarantee that you're going to smash Europe straight away. It'll take time. No, maybe St. James's Park will make a difference that the Etihad clearly doesn't like, and on European nights. And you've done well in Europe before, as we spoke before in the past, going back under Bobby Robson in particular. 2002, 2003, had a very good run. But I just think this season you might just miss out on top four. That would be my opinion. Now, at whose expense or who will get at your expense is another question. But I can't see. Man City and Arsenal are guarantees at this stage, I think.
I agree. Yeah.
So that leaves two spaces. You don't trust Man United? I don't either.
I'm trusting them more than I used to now. I'm trusting them more than I used to. I watched them play. I watched the match back this morning, the Forest match. I'm trusting them more than I used to. I just still think they're not quite. No, this is the other thing. United, Chelsea, and I forgot Tottenham initially. They have far superior squads to Newcastle's. That's not the debate I'd be having. My thing is just the way Newcastle are playing right now. That's kind of that's my logic. But even at that, I still don't feel great about it. As I said, if you'd asked me 72 hours ago, I would have given pretty much the exact same answer you're giving. I would have just thought, nah, like over 38 games, 1 or 2 injuries. And I still think that might do us out of it. Just the way we're playing right now, I wouldn't be surprised if we beat Leeds at home next week and then we go to Arsenal and get a draw and then win 1 or 2 more games. And all of a sudden, you're sitting there with only 1 loss out of 21 or 2 fixtures. And at that stage, it gets hard to get knocked out of it.
Well, another thing
you are right, like, you are right. Your logic is rock solid, like.
Another thing, I suppose, on the other side of the coin that's very much in your favour, finishing top 4, you don't have Europe to worry about. Cup runs aside, you'll have 1 game a week between now and May. So that's one thing that could twist it in your favour. Because United playing in the Europa League there, although they may not be playing it for long when they're playing Barcelona next, but it's a huge... And Liverpool as well. Liverpool are playing Real Madrid. They're against Real Madrid in Europe is shocking, so they could be out of that. But what I would be saying, what I would be hoping is, just like you did last year against Cambridge, I think it would be good for you to get knocked out with the FA Cup early. Get out of it. Looking back, I've said it before, I don't give a 2 penny fuck about the FA Cup or the League Cup. I won't lie, I celebrated winning both of them last season, beating Chelsea in the final on penalties both day. It was silverware. But the only mass I placed in it was it was going to be part of a quadruple, which ultimately didn't happen. But I firmly believe that winning those 2 trophies, or cups, I should say, prevented us winning the trophies that counted, the Premier League and the Champions League.
Yeah. Well, I suppose the context of that for you, through your lens being a Liverpool fan, is that ye are a genuine bona fide contender for those other trophies, whereas Newcastle aren't. So if you said to me, if you offered me this minute the FA Cup and finish 7th, I would take the hand off you. I'd shake hands with you right now and say thank you for a fabulous season. Do you know what I mean? If you told me we would finish 10th from where we are now and you offered me the FA Cup, I would take it. But that's because coming from a different place that I'm coming from. Do you know? And your context is way different to mine. Do you know? And like, if Newcastle got to an FA Cup final, for instance, there'd be 250,000 people looking for tickets.
Yeah.
Whereas if Liverpool and Man United got to the FA Cup final, there wouldn't be that many between them looking for tickets. They just wouldn't, because, like you said, you've won enough of them. It's not, and also, I suppose, if they wanted to make the FA Cup important, they'd give the winners of a Champions League qualification. Like the FA could do that. The Premier, you know what I mean? They could
Martinez could have been in the Champions League after all if it was there in 2012.
Didn't Steve Bruce get Hull to the League Cup final one time or something? Or FA Cup final?
Yeah, 2014 against Arsenal.
Fucking hell! I listen. That Martinez thing. If Bruce can do it, anybody, myself and you, can fucking do it. So anyway,
I assume your membership or your chairman of the Steve Bruce Appreciation Society is still very much intact 12 months on.
It's like this now. He took over West Brom and they were 5th in the Championship and he left them in the relegation zone not 6 months later. So,
Bruce effect.
Yeah. Look, listen, I wish him well. Genuinely, I wish him well. It was a horrible chapter of my time, but look, it was what it was.
Here's a scenario for you. So, on one hand, you've guaranteed top 4 finish.
Right.
And in hand 2 is an FA Cup. But as you said, you finished 7th. Which one are you taking?
The second one.
So you put silverware ahead of the FA Cup.
Oh,
sorry, you put silverware ahead of the Champions League.
Yes. I'd actually rather, believe it or not, no, and you might not believe me, I would actually not mind if we finished outside of the European places this year. It wouldn't bother me. I know it's probably an impossibility already, I would say. And the reason why is just what you said a while ago, and I meant to say it, I had it in my mind to say it, but I forgot it. Newcastle not being in Europe is probably the large part. Not that Newcastle's results are really been affected, because we've done okay against the good teams. I'm more on about the day that Liverpool are coming off a long trip from wherever, and then they have to go play Crystal Palace at 1 o'clock on a Saturday, or whatever. We don't have that. And I see it like on a Saturday, watching Newcastle play on Saturday, kick off at 3 o'clock. They're so fit and they're so hungry and they're so fresh. They remind me a little bit. I was only saying it yesterday, or 2 days ago, watching them. Newcastle were pressing up on Leicester. They reminded me of what Liverpool were like when Klopp took them over first. Do you know, where they were swarming on top of you. And do you know what I mean? But the thing is,
the hunger, like.
Yeah, and the way Eddie Howe's team plays requires you to be so fit and so hungry and so intense. I don't know if you can do that if you have to play 50 games. Maybe you can, but you need some squad for it. Do you know what I mean? And that's where I'm right with you on the thing of Newcastle could fall short. The way we're playing, if we happen to go far in the FA Cup, which I think we might, if we beat Leicester at home in the quarterfinal of the League Cup, which I think we will, all of a sudden now you could be talking an extra 6 or 7 fixtures squeezed into January, February, March, April, and that could be our undoing, I would be inclined to say. But I would take the FA Cup this minute. If you offered me, if I could get a ticket to Wembley, I'd pay £1,000 for it if they were in the final. Do you know? Because the way I look at it is we may never again see it. Now I know you're looking at it through a cold analytical eye and you're saying you're the wealthiest club, of course you're going to get back. Whereas I have 33 years of scars telling me, no, like, you're never going to get back. Take your chance. Do you know what I mean? So it's just different context, like, you know.
Well, that was my logic for paying over the odds for a ticket for the Champions League final in Paris, because you can't, there's no guarantee, no matter how good your pedigree is, you only get back there again, and you need to take these chances when they come up. Okay, so you're thinking at the minute, you predict, you think that Newcastle will sneak into the top 4. That's your prediction right now.
I'm being optimistic now, but realistically, we'll go with it.
So Arsenal, the top 4, not in any particular order: Arsenal, City, Newcastle,
Liverpool. Arsenal, Liverpool, Newcastle.
Okay. Yeah,
there is a bit of rose-tinted glasses in that, like, but we'll go with it.
I think it could be Arsenal, City, Liverpool, United. I think United.
I think Tottenham finish United.
No, I think United have their head screwed on this year. I like the look of Ten Hag as manager. I think he'll do well with them long term.
Well, at least they're letting him do his job, which is the first time they've done it in 10 years.
The problem with Liverpool is as well, I think that whoever drops points next is going to be very important. Like Liverpool are 4 points behind United now.
Right.
If that gap goes to 6 or 7, that's hard to claw back.
It is.
Whereas if the reverse happens and it goes back to 1, I'd fancy Liverpool to kick on. So I think whoever drops points first is going to have a major factor, I'd say. Like Liverpool had dropped an awful lot of stupid. Like Liverpool lost Nottingham Forest and Leeds 2 weeks in a row there.
Yeah.
There were 6 huge big points dropped there.
Well, the Forest one was a killer. Like.
Yeah. But the shape, just Liverpool just weren't themselves at all. And there was a hangover from the end of last season as well, and not reinforcing in the transfer window. We're just going to be on to my next point. It looks like Cody Gakpo is in the bag from PSV.
Mm-hmm.
Do you reckon that's a good signing for Liverpool? Would you reckon that could make?
I think longer term it will be. I don't like. I'm always wary of players from Holland. It's a massive, like, there's some difference between Holland, Dutch football, and the Premier League. But in saying that, Liverpool are a strong enough club. I was thinking about it since I spoke to you about it. Was yesterday. I was thinking about it since, like, you're strong enough. Like, I think Darwin Nunez would have done better. I'll come around back to it. Darwin Nunez would have done better if Jota was fit and Diaz was fit, because he wouldn't have to be leading the line for them all the time. And the same magnifying glass or spotlight wouldn't be on. So like when he misses a chance now, people are looking going, well, Mane would have scored that, or Firmino would have scored that. There's a bit of that. It's more that you've kind of had and seen the alternative. And therefore it gets compared to, and then you have the other thing where you have Haaland playing for City, and he's every time he touches the ball, it goes in.
Yeah.
And so you have that kind of juxtaposition. But the one thing bringing Gakpo in will do is he might play out on the left-hand side, I reckon, for you a bit. I don't know will he play up front that much. But he did the same attention that Nunez got and he's getting won't be as severe for Gakpo. And if it takes him a year to come right, Liverpool are strong enough that they can kind of take that hit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whereas if he joined United now, for instance, which was the other club, like, so you signed him from under the noses of Man United by the sounds of it. If he had joined Man United, I actually think he made the right decision going to Liverpool, because the pressure, if he went to Man United, would be unreal. Like,
yeah,
because United are crying out for a striker and they'd be expecting him to score goals straight away. And I could be wrong. He could come in, he could sign fee, and he could score 10 goals between here and the end of the season to Liverpool, because I think longer term, you have enough forwards that when you get the boys back from injuries and stuff, he'll be able to be kind of slowly phased in rather than just thrown it. Because I mean, if you move to United right now, you're being thrown straight into the fire. Like, so I think it will be a good signing for you, but it mightn't be a good signing over the next 6 months, we'll just say.
I would be very wary, and I would hope that Gakpo was in Liverpool scout sites before the World Cup, because I would be very wary about signing a player just because they had a good World Cup. We had enough of that with Juff, Joe, with Senegal back in 2002.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes World Cups don't give a true reflection. So from what I saw of him, he impressed me anyway in the World Cup. So I hope he does well.
Yeah.
Just to go back to Darwin Nunez there, I remember it's funny how words can come back to haunt people, but I remember your first impression of Joelinton, seeing him in the flesh, wasn't particularly positive.
It was not.
And I believe the term you used at the time was he has the opposite of a magnet.
Yeah, which is still true, by the way. Still true. His touch is still shit. He's just not playing up front, so it's all right.
Kieran's words very much came back into my mind watching Darwin Nunez against Aston Villa on St. Stephen's Day, because his first touch is absolutely cat.
Yeah.
Now, one thing, the Villa fans were singing, "You're a shit, Andy Carroll." He's streets ahead of Andy Carroll.
That's not very fair, no. That's not fair. Yeah,
I think he just needs to cut his hair and just get rid of that. you know, because he's not an Andy Carroll. He tries his heart out. He's a phenomenal trier. And that's one thing you can never fault. And Gary Skyner, who had on the podcast, Liverpool comedian, who, by the way, is going to be in Newcastle West and the Stowe at the end of January performing, which I hope anyone watching will turn out, anyone local. If you're around yourself here, and I hope you're around that night.
Make an appearance.
It will be his warm-up. Gary Skyner was very critical of Darwin Nunez publicly on his Facebook, scathing, in fact. And then having seen him live, he very much backtracked in that and was big enough to admit he was wrong, and that, and Liverpool fans will give Nunez the space.
Yeah.
If Liverpool fans see a player is trying their best for the team, Peter Crouch got space, Nunez will too, right? You know what I mean? They'll give him space. But I have concerns. His first touch, he went down a rabbit hole, and he had the assist he got for Bacicic's goal, the third goal to seal the win.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of players would have left that ball go. Like, and there were shades of the Japan. He was near enough to going out. But he did very well to keep it in. But the concern I have about him is the chances he missed in that game and against Man City the previous game were poor. Like, you know what I mean? And as I said, I've a huge thing about hitting the target. Even if you hit the ball at the goalkeeper.
Yeah.
And it's handy for the bet builders and Petty Power as well, a shot on target. So I won't knock him for that.
Yeah.
Hit the target, snatching at shots and putting it 6 feet wide. It's very frustrating to watch. And as you said yourself, we were talking about it after the Villa game, he doesn't look confident at all. The ball
yeah. You never think he's going to score. You never think. When you're watching him go through, even when he's 1v1, you're going,
yeah. And he was one
It's
on one a few times now as well, which is important. Like,
well, the one that summed it up for me, I watched the Villa game, and he across came in. I was only about a minute and a half gone, 2 minutes, and he stepped over it and left it run across the box for he thought Salah might have been coming. Now, there's two ways looking at that, and you know me, I'd be fair. One way would be he had the intellect to think, well, there's someone else coming here who might get a better opportunity. I'll leave it roll through my legs. Whereas Robbie Fowler would have hit that fucking thing.
yeah.
Mike Lohan would have hit it.
If
Salah wouldn't have left that ball for Nunez. No chance. No way. Because I remember Mane several times. Mane being in an unbelievable position and Salah saying, nah, I'm taking a shot. And rightly so, because the more shots you take, the odds are, if you hit the target 10 times, 3 of them will go in or 4 of them will go in. That's that the odds say. And Nunez could have drawn his left foot. It was coming across him from his left side. Can't remember who crossed it. Might have been Robertson.
Yeah, probably left.
It was only in the first. You could probably watch the match back. It was in the first 2 minutes, and he left the ball. He stepped over and left it run through his legs. If he just even flashed any kind of a shot on target, it would have been very hard to save because there was such pace on the cross. But it was the action of well-intended, I have no doubt, and intelligent, I have no doubt, and ferocious hard working, but just not of a confident player.
He left
a confident player would have hit that ball.
He left for the World Cup a confident player. He played very well against Southampton, but I think the World Cup experience probably might have affected him a bit. He didn't have a good World Cup, from what I saw him anyway. I backed him to win the Golden Boot.
Right, worked out nicely.
Yeah, that was a bad investment. But
I still, like, with that said, like, as I think his touch is terrible, but that can be improved.
Yeah,
right. A bit. It normally fellas either kind of have it or they haven't, but it could be improved. As I said, I just think that he's in a position that he's not qualified for right now, this minute, and he's been compared in an he's being put in an unflattering comparison, or being watched by so many, and that Mane is after leaving, and to keep up. And the other thing is, then again, you have Man City across the road, so to speak. And they have, after signing a striker that just can't miss. And so it kind of puts it in a worse light than it actually is. But the big thing that, and you mentioned it earlier, about the Liverpool fans won't get on his back. That's a huge thing. Because if he signed for, like I said about Gakpo, if Gakpo signed for Man United and he was up front in their first game and he didn't play well right away, no, the fans wouldn't, you know what I mean? But the spotlight from the media, from the Twitter, from the everything, would be so. It's like, that's a factor. If Darwin Nunez had signed for Leeds and he'd scored 7 goals or whatever many goals, everyone would say, a good signing for Leeds. He might get a move to Liverpool off the back of this. Do you know that kind of a way?
Yeah.
It's just that I think, and I said it to you the other day, was he probably moved a year too early.
Yeah.
And do you know what I mean? But that is what it is, and you just have to live with the warts of it. You know,
he's the third. It's his third full season in top flight football. Like, you know,
yeah, he's raw. Like,
he's young.
Yeah,
and look, as I said, the future is promising. Definitely, like, it's like the Kit Kat song, "Can't sing, can't dance," but will go far. But he definitely has the potential to do well, and I think he will come well. It's just that at the minute, it's not working right now, and it's been amplified by the fact that Jota and Diaz are injured. Because like, you could give a guy, and you notice yourself in coaching teams that say the player is low on confidence, it's good sometimes to take a step back, you know, just to test things.
Well, what I would do with him if I was his manager and I had my full complement of players, I would wait until someday I'd leave him out. Someday we're winning 2-0 at home and it looks like there's goals in it for us. Try, man. Give him a half an hour in a game that you're comfortable and well on top in. Chances are a handy chance will fall to him against a weaker team and he'll take it and spoon feed him like that for a while. Do you know what I mean? Maybe 3 or 4 games like that. Because Liverpool, by and large, will be on top, particularly in the home games. They're going to be comfortable enough in most home games that they could afford to let other people do the heavy lifting in the beginning time.
Yeah.
And then but unfortunately, he's in a position, and they're in a position where their hands are tied in that regard. You know, even the Gakpo thing, was probably more one they were probably pulling tough until the summer, but they just pulled the trigger because there's lads injured. That's probably the logic there. Like, unless as you said, the other side of it is maybe they saw him in the World Cup and said, right, we'll do it now. There is that possibility as well.
Yeah, I reckon he will come good at some stage, and I definitely can't fault him for effort. But you'd hope the things that he's lacking that can be worked on, you know. And I think shooting practice definitely can be worked on, you know.
But it's more like I've no doubt in my mind that if he goes through a shooting drill in training, he'll score 9 out of 10 for you. That's the thing with these professional footballers. They're magicians with the ball at their feet. It's not that. It's that when it happens in a game, it's the split-second reaction to confidently take on that shot is the difference between... There's no question if you put a ball in front of a Premier League footballer in training and asked him from 30 yards out to hit the ball into a certain spot, he'll do it for you. But it's at full speed when the pressure is on and everyone's watching. I don't want to look foolish here. I don't want to mishit this ball. I don't want to make a mistake. Yeah. That's what it is. Like but it's only when you don't care about making mistakes that you stop making them.
Yeah,
and it's just that he's new. Like
he snatches the things. He snatches the ball sometimes, and he takes too long other times. Like he's literally. Con Houlihan said once, giving advice, journalist, you make the right mistakes. I think he'd say the same if he saw Nunez, he's getting in the position to make the mistakes. He's making a balls of it with the end product. But the fact he's getting in the positions, I think, is a key thing, and he's running in behind defenders. And I think overall he'll do well. In terms of the overall context, Kieran, of the title race, you don't think Newcastle are in the equation this year?
No.
Arsenal or City? I'll put in as blunt a term as that.
City.
Okay. I would probably agree with you. I would very much agree with you, actually. But the one caveat, if Haaland gets a long-term injury,
right,
you think that City will be able to recover from that?
Yeah.
Even with Jesus and Sterling, is there enough goals in that City team without Haaland?
Well, I watched Alvarez in the World Cup, and City won the league the last 2 years without a striker. Do you know?
Yeah.
Now, in the middle of a season, to go from what they're doing to a totally different thing is very hard. That's the only thing I would say. They would have, because they've changed the way they play gradually over the year to suit Haaland way more. There's way more crosses going into the box now. There's way more, they're way more direct. They're actually twice as good a team now, in my opinion, than they were prior to Haaland. Now, I know the league table and the stats may not back that. But to my eye, the way they play now, they have way more strings to their bow. Like when City were dominating, they had to totally dominate the ball and totally pass you into submission. Now, they can get a ball 35, 40 yards out from goal and just swing it into a general area, and Haaland will go and get it. Like the first goal he got against Liverpool last week. That's a goal they would have never scored before. It makes them so much more dangerous that they can just hit a long ball now over you, and Haaland can chase after it and score out of nothing. They never had that to them. They always had to be completely camped in your box. So this fit, I just can't see how anyone would finish ahead of them. Even in Europe, having him is a dimension. Like, I don't know what you do with them. I don't know how you would approach it now.
I think they'll find a way to blow it, though, City in Europe.
I would, at some point here, by default, they'll fall over the line. They have to eventually.
Hopefully it won't be anytime soon, but you're probably right, they will.
By law of averages, if you keep getting to finals and semi-finals, you're going to have to hit the jackpot eventually. But anyway, the question you asked me was the Premier League and if Haaland got injured. I still think they could win it without him.
I think Limerick are proof of that theory as well, that by law of averages eventually will win one and it'll come together.
I think even if he got injured, they could win the league. But that's like planning for, I mean, Gabriel Jesus is injured at the moment. If he stays injured, Arsenal can forget about it. It's the same. You could say that about anybody.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think Arsenal showed great character last night now to go a goal down, and they came back, blitz the second half. And I thought they were in trouble actually that night against West Ham.
Yeah, that was a great win from.
Yeah. The relegation, dogfight probably isn't as close to your heart this year as it was 12 months ago, for obvious reasons.
I still have PTSD.
But if you were to name your three to go down in May, who would they be?
Well, Southampton and Forest, definitely. And I'm having a bit of an internal debate. I was looking at it for ages. You're going to laugh now, but I think Bournemouth.
I wouldn't laugh at all. They're only 3 points away from the drop zone. So
Bournemouth. Now, the only thing is Everton are atrocious at the moment, which, by the way, I must just slip it in there because I can't resist it. All the Everton fans who said it was just Benitez, and now they've had 6 months of Lampard, and they're worse off now than they were. I just think it's poetic, because I remember you and me talking about this last year, saying there's bigger problems there, not Benitez. And I don't all blame Lampard either. I think there's bigger problems there that have nothing to do with Frank Lampard. Everton's club is just a mess, and they are where they are because of it. It's the very same as the way Newcastle used to be. If you're a mess at the top, you'll be a mess at the bottom, by and large.
But the money they spent over the last number of years, I'm pretty sure it's more than what Liverpool has spent.
Probably more than what anyone has spent. They've spent as much. Well, I don't know that, but they've definitely spent comparable to any top 4 team, I would say.
Yeah.
But they're just badly ran, badly managed. No, I don't think Frank Lampard's a good manager. But they were down there under Benitez. They can be down there under anybody. So anyway, but I think Everton have enough good players. They'll survive. West Ham, David Moyes' team won't go down. I just refuse to believe it. I was talking to a couple of Leeds fans actually last Friday night. I went for a few pints in town, and 2 massive Leeds fans, mate of mine, Ted Murphy, he's involved with the soccer team with me. He'd be a bit older than me now. He'd be maybe in his late 40s, early 50s. And he said
that's a good age profile for Irish Leeds fans, isn't it? Like late 40s, 50s.
Yeah, I'd say that's what roughly. His kids are in their early 30s anyway. So I'm doing very rough maths there. He must be in his early 50s. Anyway, he was just saying that they were worried, there was 2 Leeds fans I met. They were worried. And I thought they'd be okay, because I have this theory about teams that have goals in them, and Leeds can score goals, and teams that can score goals generally don't go down. Leeds are by far and away the highest scorers of the bottom 6 or 7. They have 22 goals got in 15 games, so there should be no fear of them. Everton's problem is they can't score to save their lives, and the same with Wolves. Wolves only 10 goals got. But Wolves are just after getting Lopetegui in as their manager. You'd think a manager of that caliber would pull them out of it. Now, Bournemouth, I've very little to go on other than Bournemouth have played Newcastle twice this season. I've seen them play 90 minutes 2 times, and both times they were pathetic. They made no attempt to play at all. They were 11 men behind the ball. They might stay up, Bournemouth, but I hope they don't, because of the way they're playing. And they got beat at home yesterday off Chelsea, and Chelsea aren't having a great season. So I don't know. I just have this thing that I think Bournemouth will go down, because I think Wolves, Everton, West Ham and Leeds have too many good players.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think Leicester could actually find themselves in a bit of bother as well.
Yeah, they have too many good players, though, Pod. Too many good players. Madison, Tielemans, Vardy, they have too many, in my opinion.
Yeah, to be honest,
Wolves,
I would be inclined to agree with you. I think that Bournemouth could be in trouble as well. I go for those the same 3 as you: Bournemouth, Forest and Southampton on reflection.
Because, well, my logic is Wolves, Jimenez is back from injury now, and he scored just before Christmas, before the break. If they can keep Jimenez fit, they'll be fine. And they'll sign players because they've got money. Everton are the same. As much and all as Everton are blowing money, they still have it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And Bournemouth probably... that's the thing about Bournemouth. After bought by Americans, and you'd always be wary. Like last year, Burnley, like Newcastle stayed up last year, and everyone, it was a great achievement and all the rest of it. But Burnley willingly sold Chris Wood to Newcastle. There was no release clause there, like.
Yeah,
like
that was an unusual decision.
Yeah, and they willingly sold like to a direct rival. Like that, I know Chris Wood isn't Alan Shearer, but Burnley missed his goals. Now Weghorst did well for them after he came in, to be fair. and Bournemouth are top of the championship, or Burnley, sorry, are top of the championship. They're flying now with a good manager. Company looks like a good manager. But I would be concerned that Bournemouth, you know what Americans are like, you had them for a while and you still have them.
We still have them.
Don't different
how much longer is the key now? But,
yeah, but they don't like spending money.
Yeah.
And that'd be my concern, is that like Wolves will 100% spend money. Everton 100% will spend money, and West Ham 100% will spend money. Leeds also don't tend to like spending money. I just think Leeds are better than Bournemouth. That's my logic. Basically is what it boils down to. I'm kind of dismissing the other three teams as realistic relegation teams, because they have good managers, kind of, they have good players, kind of, and they have plenty of money, all of them.
It'll be interesting to see Bramley Dock in the championship. It'll be the nicest stadium in the championship when it opens. But
no, I can't see. No, in saying that, and I know this as a Newcastle fan, I remember saying to you before, I mightn't have said it on air, but that Newcastle went down in, was it 16 under McLaren for most of the season and Benitez at the end.
Yeah.
And that relegation was in the post for 2 or 3 years. Do you know that kind of a way?
Yeah.
It's a bit like Everton now.
Like Coventry and Southampton back in the day, they were great at escaping relegation late in the year, but eventually it came to them, like, and they have to get back.
Yeah, like eventually the angel of death will tap you on the shoulder. Like, that's the only thing about Everton, is like Everton are doing this, they're playing this game of Russian roulette now with a couple of years, and eventually you'll get snake eyes. Like, you know, now Leeds, you could make the same, but like, to be fair, Leeds only came up in the championship in recent years.
A couple of years ago, yeah.
You know, but like Everton have been not hectic now at all since Ancelotti left, really. Although Benitez's early time was okay, but the last 2 seasons now they've been down there, and normally if you spend 3 or 4 years in a row down there, eventually you fall through the trapdoor. Like,
just to summarise, we're saying City to win the league. We're differing on Newcastle finishing the top 4. I'm saying no, you say yes, and we're agreeing on the 3 teams to be relegated: Southampton, Forest, and Bournemouth. And I hope I'm wrong, by the way. I hope that you do get top 4 at United's expense, of course.
Yeah, look, we'll see how we go. I'm being a bit on the, I'll admit, like, I'm being a bit on the optimistic side there. But if you offer me an FA Cup this minute, I'll happily trade in the top 4 for you.
Well, I think that top 4 over the next few years will be very much on the cards for Newcastle. It can't not be. There'll be, you have the investment behind you, and yeah, I'm looking forward to analysing those, and it certainly won't be 12 months again before you'll be on. We're going to have you on more regularly when work allows for both of us, and we'll also have a chat with you, if you don't mind, Kieran, about your coaching. How is your coaching going at the minute? How are you getting on in Newcastle?
Not as good this year now. Not as good this year. We now maybe for another time, but there's fairly good squad there. But the season has been tough thus far with injuries and suspensions, and it's a little bit like if we could we have our first game back now, the 8th of January. If we could win that, we'll be kind of in the mix again. But we're out of the mix at the moment. I put it that way. We're out of the mix at the moment. We're not. There hasn't been many games played, so we've still 15 games left, and we've probably 6 or 7 points to make up.
Well, there's 45 points to play for, and take inspiration from Newcastle this time 12 months ago, so. Exactly.
Oh no, it's doable, but we've a mountain to climb at the moment. It's doable, but we'll have a lot of lads come back from injury now, from pretty much from Christmas on. So over the next 2-3 weeks, I should be nearly back to full strength, I'd say, by the time St. Itis Day comes. I'd be hoping.
Which is the 15th of January again, for people who are...
for anyone
anyone outside the parish of Clee just not familiar with St. Itis Day. So Kieran, thanks very much for dropping by again. Great seeing you again after 12 months.
Yeah, thanks very much. Good crack always.
Thanks to you guys for tuning in. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notifications bell so don't miss any future videos and updates. If you want to buy me or Kieran, I'll split it with you, Kieran, if anyone does, I'm honest. The link is in the description below. And if you want to check out my vlogging channel, Pitch Botting with Padraig, you can see my trip to St. James's Park last February against Everton that Kieran kindly helped me out with the ticket. I had a job convincing the lady ticket office that night, by the way, that I wasn't Kieran Shanahan. But
yeah, I've heard the Newcastle box office is a bit contrary. I've heard that. All right.
Thanks very much for joining us here on the Parley Pod podcast. We'll see you next time. Good night. God bless.